So when you go out and you run these appointments, is it normally just going to be the Medicare product that you are presenting, or do you end up cross-selling several products along with that and you're kind of stacking up multiple products? How do you know?
Definitely cross-selling.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Hospital plans, cancer or dental vision hearing plans if they want it. That's not usually the case. I'm in Missouri, and our penetration for Medicare Advantage is very, very high. I think it's like 90% or something crazy.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of hips, not a lot of DVH unless they need it. I bring it up, and a lot of life insurance as well. So, on some of these leads, you get 20% life insurance rates, conversion rates. So you can always flip their life insurance, get it cheaper, or do a reduced paid up and rewrite a policy for a little bit less, which a lot of people don't know that trick, and that's huge.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for watching and joining us for another awesome episode. Today's guest is the one and only Julian Chambers. I'm so excited to have this monster Medicare producer on the show today, and we got a lot of great things to unpack. So, Julian, thanks for being on today. How are you doing?
Dude, super good. Thanks for having me. Very excited. Love everything that you're doing. I have your Senior Sales University, and I think people really need automations, especially me. So really appreciate all that you do, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you on so many levels, man. I do obviously appreciate you're a member and appreciate just the example that you're providing for other people. You post your daily either affirmations or pieces of advice or things that could be helpful to other producers. And I love seeing that, right? It's giving value just for the sake of giving value. So a couple of things that I want to kind of hammer on is that for those who don't know who you are yet, you are a force to be reckoned with. You are one of those people who come in hot, has a goal in mind. You're very consistent on what you want to do. And it's led to, you got into the business just a year ago and already have amassed over 300 clients. So that means you're basically staying on a course where you're writing 25 to 30 apps a month, which I guarantee you, everybody in this business wants to be writing that amount of business. So you have a lot to say, you have a lot to share, and I'm really excited to start unpacking some of this on the episode. One of the things that I wanted to start with is we just came off 8% Nation, right? You were at 8% Nation, I was at 8% Nation, and there was a piece of advice you gave. And with right now, if you look right now, conferences are the heavy thing that's being promoted. You see that we still have the Medicare Supplement Conference is coming up in September. We have Justin Brock's Medicare Con and Christian Brindle's Six-Figure Medicare Summit now being advertised right now to get people ready for next year. So anytime somebody goes to a conference, it gets easy to be hyped up by all the stuff that you see there. But a lot of times once you get back home, you kind of lose steam from all of that excitement and motivation. So you posted something that I believe everybody needs to hear. Tell people your takeaway. Like, what do you do to make sure that when you go to these events, you are able to go home and actually turn it into actionable steps that can get you to grow your agency?
Yeah, I love that. And I totally agree. And I definitely want to give some tactical things that people can walk away with today. I'm not a big story guy to where I tell my story. I think it's great and that helps a lot of people. But if I can give something right now, when I was younger, I used to read all the books. I had all the knowledge. I literally had tons of books, still do. And I knew everything, but I didn't execute on everything that I knew. Most of us know what we should do, but we don't do what we should do, right? But we know it. We know that we need to do something, but we don't figure it out. So with the conferences, I think the biggest thing is actually taking away key things that you learn. We're already deletion creatures. We're always deleting information because we get so much every day that you might as well delete everything that you don't need and that you're not going to use when you go to these conferences. So I created a little, it's so simple, and this is pretty obvious. It's not, something brand new, but just something that I do that helps me is I create a little takeaway list. Hey, what are my top takeaways from this event that I can go home and implement ASAP? Something that I'm not waiting around. It's good to get motivated and all that, but what can I do when I get home that's going to move the needle forward for me? And everything else that isn't within that takeaway list, I literally forget it. I delete it out of my mind because I don't want this extra, my brain can only hold so much information. I don't want all this stuff in there because I don't need to know everything. I want to know what's going to take me from where I am to where I want to go ASAP.
Yeah. And I love
Hope
that.
that answers your question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's, that's the key right there. A lot of people will take a ton of notes. You're talking pages and pages and pages of notes, but you're saying you got to simplify it to a list of actionable items that they can take home and start moving the needle. I like how you say that, because you're right. We're deletion creatures. So even though you have pages and pages of notes, a lot of people don't go back and revisit those pages and pages, and everything that they did have stored in memory, they start to slowly delete because they got other stuff that's coming in, new material, new data. And so I love
Constant.
that you talked about that. I love that you talk about this list. It's short, it's easy, it's concise, and it helps them to start getting into that momentum that they need to actually start growing their agency. And I love that.
Yeah, and I take notes with every speaker if I find like they're going to help me, just to stay engaged, because I know I'm going to retain more and I'm going to stay engaged. Because if I'm just sitting like this, listening to someone speak, for me, I'm not engaged. So I'm writing, I try to stay fast. Movement will make, like when people read, they're usually stagnant. One thing that can help you read, if you read it all, is if you use your finger to follow along, your brain will pay more attention because there's movement there. So any way I can engage myself. But out of those notes, I look at, hey, what are the takeaways? And then I make the takeaway list and go from there.
So you started off, if I remember correctly, you started off with FFL, Family First Life, in the life insurance niche before you got into Medicare. What is it that attracted you to start moving in the direction of Medicare from where you were?
Great question. Residual income, just straight up. And building a business, like, nothing against any IMO. I think there's so many successful IMOs and they're all great in different ways. But for me, it wasn't IMO specific. My complaint isn't. But for me, when I have a client call me, I would prefer them to call me asking a question or wanting to talk to me rather than just wanting to cancel a policy. And so I felt like I was on this treadmill of writing a life insurance policy and never talk to them again unless they're wanting to cancel. And I'm like, fucking, this sucks.
Yeah.
I'm a people person. So I love people and I want to stay engaged with them and keep my clients engaged and everything. But, if they're calling me just to cancel and it's just like a transactional thing, I don't enjoy it as much.
Right.
And I don't think long-term that's how you build an actual business. I think you stay as a personal producer that way. And that was not what I wanted. So I left the insurance industry completely and then came back into it after I heard about Medicare. And I was like, wow, there's something here, residual income. I can have an actual book of business that's not just transactional.
Yeah.
And that's what really attracted me to it.
I
started in August of last year.
In August, yeah. So you're basically at a year mark right now that you've been in it. And like I said, most people who get into it in their first year do not end up writing the amount of policies you wrote, which is why a lot of people want to look at you and say, okay, well, how do I replicate doing that? So let's kind of break it down a little bit more. Right now, your focus is mostly face-to-face, or is it by telephone?
Everything face-to-face. And I don't feel like I've done that much because I was talking to Ryan Travers and he started the same time as me. And he's like, dude, I got way more clients than you. So, but yeah, I started face-to-face. I still do face-to-face. I love it. And, there's people go back and forth with the thing. It's just my thing for now. If I ever transition out of the field, that's great. If not, that's okay too. But face-to-face, cross-sell a lot. I run a lot of Facebook LIS leads, food card leads, different types of Facebook leads right now. And then I'll be transitioning into seminars and more branding. I have a website. I have a YouTube channel I started last month with one video on it. So I need to get that going. But really everything is Facebook right now.
Yeah.
Getting that initial book going and then slowly transitioning to branding.
So when you go out and you run these appointments, is it normally just going to be the Medicare product that you are presenting, or do you end up cross-selling several products along with that and you're kind of stacking up multiple products? How do you know?
Definitely cross-selling.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Hospital plans, cancer or dental vision hearing plans if they want it. That's not usually the case. I'm in Missouri and our penetration for Medicare Advantage is very, very high. I think it's like 90% or something crazy.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of hips, not a lot of DVH unless they need it. I bring it up. And a lot of life insurance as well. So, on some of these leads, you get 20% life insurance rates. Conversion rates. So you can always flip their life insurance, get it cheaper, or do a reduced paid up and rewrite a policy for a little bit less, which a lot of people don't know that trick. And that's huge.
I like that. That's a good takeaway right there for the life producers, what you just said right there. So let me ask you then, what do you feel? And I don't know if you want to share this or not, but a lot of people want to know, okay, well, if I want to try to write that amount of apps, what do I got to invest in leads every month? Like, do you have a budget that you like to stick around that agents can kind of have an idea? Well, if I want to get in this business, I should probably be able to earmark that I'm going to spend X amount every month on leads to be able to make that kind of, write that many apps.
In my opinion, I think you need to spend at least 1,000 a week if you want to do 10 a week.
Good.
Based on my numbers, but
Yeah.
it can fluctuate, but I'd say at least, 1,000, maybe 1,200 a week. And I think having something like Facebook leads, we get them for sometimes $10, sometimes $3.
Yeah.
When these leads come in.
They fluctuate.
So
that's why you're saying that.
Yeah, and those kind of leads, you can do direct mail too. Those just cost more. But with Facebook leads, like there's a lot of people doing it, but there's a lot of people that aren't really capitalizing on the Facebook. Like I don't know how long it's going to last. I'm trying to ride the wave as long as we can. And I don't think it's maybe a long-term branding play, but to get that short-term lead flow for dirt cheap, if you can invest, a ton into these short-term leads, I mean, they're not going to cost as much as something like direct mail.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's one of the things people need to hear, because the words SEO seem to be so sexy to people. They like the idea of having a website where people go organically and generate leads, but that takes time. And if you're running a business, you can't rely on running a business based on free leads that are coming in organically. Like it's silly to think that it's a long play. You have to invest, and that's one of the things that I always want to hit home when I'm talking to big producers like yourself, is that you need to reiterate that for people. Like, hey, I'm investing $4,000 to $4,800 a month in my lead generation, but I'm able to make that back and then some, because you're writing X amount of policies that are Medicare residuals. And then on top of that, you're cross-selling other policies that help to get you pretty far into the positive, right?
Get the cash flow. Yeah, totally. And anything SEO, I call Landon McCarter, because he's the guy for that. That guy just spits knowledge. So I have no idea about that. I'm just like, hey man, what does this mean?
So one of the things that needs to stick out in people's minds, though, that in order to achieve the results you're achieving, if you're going to write 25, 30 apps consistently every single month, what would you attribute that consistency to?
I think a couple things. Number one is having a clear picture of where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, there's no reason to even run the appointments. Number two, I think it's obviously buying leads. Like, this is so trite. This has been said so many times. It's overused for sure. Buy leads. Buy the leads and dial the leads to set the appointments. Something that really helps me that I do is I will track how my day goes. I have a dial and a sale tracker. And and this is like so small too. Like, these are small things. It's just most people know to do it. They just don't do it. And that was me for a long time, which is why I'm bringing it up. But I will track how my day went, how many closes I had, how many sits I had. And when I dial, how many phone calls I made, how many, same thing. Yeah. So that really helps me stay engaged and stay consistent with it. But the obvious answer is just go freaking do it. Like, the simple answer is literally just get out of bed and go to work. But people don't want to hear that answer.
And is there anything, I guess, is there any moment, because I'll tell you my moment here in a second, but is there any moment where, as you mentioned earlier, you knew it, but you weren't doing it? What is it that moved the needle for you so that you started doing what you already knew you needed to do?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if there's one moment. I think there's always moments, and I'm always recommitting, because I think there's levels to consistency. I'm not as consistent as I want to be right now, but I know to get to the next level, it's going to require another level of commitment. And I think it's constantly recommitting to your goals and recommitting to where you want to be and who you want to be. And that's what gets you there. One of the moments that does stick out, though, to me is it was a couple of years ago. Like I said, I got into personal development, and I got into a network marketing company in 2015, which is when I graduated high school. And so I never went to college, none of that stuff. So I kind of just started out fresh. And that's when I really started gathering the information. And I was really good at that, had a lot of knowledge. I thought I knew a lot of things, but really there's a difference between intellectual knowledge, emotional knowledge, and then physical knowledge. I can know something intellectually, but if I'm not doing it, I don't know it at the emotional or physical level. And so I can know, hey, I need to be consistent. And that's an intellectual thing. I'm like, okay, but am I really doing it? And if you're not, once you start to be consistent and you're doing what you think or what you know up here you should be doing, you start to get that physical mastery. You can literally feel when you say something, the conviction is different on it.
Yes.
Like, hey, I need to be consistent, or I'm consistent, and it comes out like as a physical thing.
Yes.
And so that's a big difference for me too. But one of the moments was I realized that I didn't want to be who I was at the time. I had a lot of pain with it because, like I had mentioned, I gathered a lot of information and did nothing with it. And I got sick of it. And I started to attach pain with that identity of myself. I said, I don't want to be the guy that knows everything and has no results for it. Like, what kind of person it's just not who I want to be. And so I think anytime you can link a ton of pain towards who you are or a behavior and a lot of pleasure to doing something else, that's when you get leverage, and that's when you move on and end up changing.
I like that. And that's really, I think the trick there is that you need to have a pain point that you can recognize and I would say make it fester, right? You have to really hammer down on that pain point to move the needle, to make you change. I know that for me, I was kind of in the same boat in the beginning where I wanted to master everything before I started talking to people. I didn't want to get caught being asked a question that I did not have the answer to. Greatest fear that I ever had. And as a result, I was a lot slower at picking up the phone to make these. And at that time, I was making cold calls, right? So I wasn't necessarily calling leads. But at the time that I had this fear, it's because I had to make these cold calls and I didn't want to get caught up. So it came down to a good friend of mine in the business, the one who got me in the business. He just basically said, you need to stop giving a fuck. And he just said it just as plain as day. You need to stop giving a fuck. Like, don't worry about how it makes you look. Don't worry about how it makes the company you represent look. Don't worry about any of that stuff. You just need to react. And for some reason, that was the aha moment for me where everything clicked. And then from then on, I just really had no fear. Like any tinge of nervousness I had, I just basically dialed and stayed reactive. I stopped trying to think ahead and telegraph what the conversation was going to be like. I just wanted to be reactive. And there's different things that I did to kind of keep my mind busy during the call so that I wouldn't try to start telegraphing and getting back into old habits. I had a putt-putt golf set up in my office so that I could be putting little balls while I was making my calls. I had a headset like yours so that I could be free in the office. And as soon as someone picked up, I already knew my intro. So I would just be able to hop right into the intro. But I remember that was the moment for me that made everything change, is that I was just told, just stop giving a fuck. And I don't mean to be so, to curse and all that stuff, but it's just like it took that to flip the switch for me, and everything changed from there.
Love that. And I would say, for someone that's just starting, which I doubt someone just starting is watching your podcast, I imagine most of the people have already started, but if they're having problems with that, whether in their head too much, one of the big things is, if you know 1% more than your client, you can help them.
Yes.
Another thing is, if you have a good upline, you can call your upline whenever you want in the home. Or if if your upline doesn't have time, I get it, but call somebody that has the answer that you want. But I love that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
most people are stuck in their heads.
And there's this irrational fear that if you tell your client, you know what, I don't actually have that answer right now, but I know who has it. Let me call you back within 20 minutes and I'll get you the answer. That
Absolutely.
is like the easiest thing that you can say, and people will still work with you. You'll still make the sale after doing that, but people have it in their head that if they have to utter those words, it's a done deal. Like you aren't going to be able to get that client. It's so not true. But I think that's one of the reasons they held back from starting to just make those calls and be reactive. And that's where it changed for me. He's like, who cares if you don't have the answer? Get the answer. Yeah. Just tell them you
find it.
Works.
Yeah. And I think I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. I have a Tony Robbins coach. I paid him a lot of money and he coaches me almost every week. We have a phone call. I think there's strategies for every emotion.
Yeah.
There's a recipe for every emotion. And most people are stuck. Like, even with their physiology, they're stuck in their heads because they're not moving. Like, there's no physiology there. And on the other side is their focus and their beliefs. What are they focused on that causes that? Like, if I were to tell you, and Tony Robbins says this, there's a depressed person right behind this door. How would you describe their physiology? Okay, they'd be slumped down, they'd be breathing shallow. What do you think they'd be focused on? They'd be focused on what they don't have, how they're not getting this or whatever. They believe that they're depressed. They believe that life sucks. And on the other side, what's the language that they'd be telling themselves? Tony Robbins calls this a triad. It's the three: focus and beliefs, language, and then the physiology. And that's what creates any emotional state. So if you want a state to go out there and kill it, where would you be? Like, I guarantee when you're in front of a client, you have a certain physiology and posture. For me, I'm talking a lot quieter. I talk very fast, so I have to slow down, have to breathe more, right? I have to actually be present. I have to be present with them. I'm telling myself in my head, my language is, I'm here to help you, whatever I can do to help, and all those types of things. And my beliefs are, I do whatever it fucking takes. I figure it out, right? And my focus is, how can I help them? How can I provide value? What can I sell them? So, and those types of things are really what people don't think about, that psychology and even the physiology. And they just stay stuck in their heads all day and they don't actually go out and execute.
What's pretty neat is that there's going to be some people who it comes more natural to them, right? The conversation part of it, how to interact with people, how to engage them, how to influence them. I mean, sometimes that can come more naturally to others, but the cool thing is that this is a science. Like, it can be learned by anybody who is willing to not only learn it, but also execute it. And I love when I get to talk to people like you who have coaches who've broken down the whole thing so that you can really understand, oh, that's how they do it, right? When I'm in front of clients, like, I'm an animated person. I use my hands a lot, just like I do with you, like, or anybody online. Like, I use my hands a lot when I'm talking. It's just something that helps it helps my voice inflection. And I love that, so I do it even when I do telesales and nobody can even see me. I'm still moving my hands. I'm still walking around.
I love
still
that.
Doing all
That's
that.
what keeps you in that state. Yeah. I love that you're aware of that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's something that I always teach people, just like, you have to remember, especially in phone sales, that they can't see you. So you don't have that benefit where they can really read your face and see your body language. So the only way to really get your point across is you still got to behave. You got to almost go extra with your body language so that they can hear it in your voice, and then it'll come across, because they can hear that in your voice, those different voice inflections. So I definitely love that whole breakdown. So let me ask you, how do you stay, and maybe you don't, but do you stay motivated daily, or do you get motivated at certain times, but you really you're just consistent? You know that the discipline of what you have to do daily is what's going to get you to your goal. So, I mean, how does it work for you?
Yeah, I'm really not always motivated. There's days and there's weeks, I don't feel like doing whatever, meeting with clients. And sometimes I don't do anything, right? And I think that's a human condition. And to think that, this is who I am, that's where people really screw up. When you accept a pattern or a behavior as who you are, that's when you give all the control to whatever the behavior or the pattern is. You can't change it. And you're locked into this pattern and you're stuck there. But when you realize it's literally just something you've practiced, just like a muscle, you go to the gym, you get muscles when you lift weights. Same thing, if you exercise your execution muscle or whatever muscle you want, your humility muscle, your humble, your confidence, these are all muscles and states that you can develop. But for me, it's about just getting into a state to where I want to go crush it. And I talked about this on the Insurance Dudes podcast, where I do an affirmation kind of deal. They're called incantations. Mm-hmm. It's basically where, instead of just repeating affirmations, that's never worked for me, because my brain's like, you're full of shit. Like, oh, I'm you're like, I'm happy.
You're
I'm
not
happy.
Great.
Yeah, you suck. Yeah. So the incantations is where I play music. I have my incantations on the mirror in my bathroom, and I actually read them out loud with my whole posture and physiology. And when you engage, I don't care if you're reading anything or not, when you just engage your whole physiology, when you're saying something, whatever, you're going to change how you feel. And then I'm in a state where I'm like, let's go fucking crush it. Yes. And it's not always that way. Some days I do it and I'm unconscious and I still, have a crappy day. That's just part of life. Yes. Right? Once you accept that, it's just part of it. But if you can get yourself into these states and start to train yourself to feel how you want, exercise those muscles, man, it could be a game changer for you. And not even just with business, with your life. Like, if you have $1 billion and you're a depressed person, you're a depressed person with $1 billion. Congratulations. Your emotions are as important, if not more important, than your business. A big person, I think, crushes this is Waylon Artrip.
Yeah.
Dude, that's somebody where, hey, that's someone I can get behind and say, I want what he has, not only in business, but his emotional, his gratitude, right? His relationships. So I think that's huge. And if you can get yourself in those states and practice them, just like you practice the other states, right? I practiced depression for a long time, and then I decided to practice the opposite.
Yeah.
And now it's easier for me to get there. So
I love that. I think there was a chef that I followed. I forget his name, but
Gordon Ramsay.
no, he's not Gordon Ramsay. He's a famous Asian chef, but he said that one of the things he would notice about himself is a lot of times he would say, I got to go do this. I got to go do that. I got to go do this. And it gave him a pretty shitty attitude because he was thinking of it as a chore. I got to go do this. Now I got to go do that. One day he said, you know what? I need to substitute that word and I got to change it to one of gratitude. So instead of saying, I got to go do this, I'm going to start saying, I get to go do this. And it changed everything for him because now he's saying, okay, well, I get to go and cook this amazing meal for these famous people. I get to go and open this new restaurant. I get to go and paint art. I get to go and do this. So now it's saying like, this is an exciting thing. Like I'm fortunate that I get to go do this because other people don't, right? And when you really look at it from the grand scheme of things and you look at it outside of our own little bubble, you really can start to gain this amazing gratitude for where we're at and the opportunities we have. And it's silly for us to not take advantage because this is something where not everybody gets to get up every day, work for themselves, make their own appointments, make the amount of money we make. You know, not everybody has that opportunity. And even if they do, they just maybe don't have the willingness to do it, but we do. And that's something that we should be grateful for. So I loved how he said that. He just changed the word from saying, I have to go do this, or I got to go do this to, I get to go do this.
Yeah, man, language is so huge. If you, I love studying people and I'm always listening to how people talk and what their language is. And if you really just listen to someone, just really listen without you thinking about how you're going to look or whatever, you're really listening to them and present with them. You can really pick up on things when they say certain words like that. You notice the language that they use and how that actually affects their body, right? Their biology, how it affects their life, their results. And I think it's just perspective. If you can wear the different hat, if you're at a big long table and you're sitting on this side, go to this side and look at the perspective from that one. Mm-hmm. Okay, if I were to go from the outside in, how's my life right now based on what I'm saying, and change your perspective on it. And sometimes people just need a wake-up call for that to happen. And the language thing sounds so hokey, like, oh, by saying I'm going to have a great day, I'm going to have a great day. It's not even always about the physical and what that's happening, but it's about controlling what's inside here. Yeah. So that's the only thing you can control. So that's what makes the biggest difference. You know, and in my opinion, language does help control the outer world, because I think what happens in here is what projects out there.
100%, right? What you're harboring in here is what's going to manifest into your body, which is going to cause you to do what you do. And I was actually, as you were explaining what your incantations are, I'm just like, I wonder if that's, I guess maybe that's what it's called, what I do. Because when I get in the car and I'm driving to the office, I would start by cranking up some song that's going to get me amped up, but then I'd turn it down, and then I would start talking to myself. I would talk to myself about, you know, what today's going to be like. And I'll even always throw in there's going to be a roadblock. There's going to be something that trips me up. There's going to be something that makes me angry, but guess what? I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to be stronger because of it. I'm going to be smarter because of it. I'm going to help more people as a result. And so I talk all these positive affirmations while I'm driving, but I'm also, as I'm driving, I'm saying it, I'm like talking to myself, you know, so people probably think I'm either rapping to a song or doing something.
They think you're nuts.
Yeah. But
what the heck's wrong with this guy?
But I'm getting the body language in there, right? I'm throwing the body language in there because it's, to me, that's part of it all. As I told you, when I'm talking to people, my body language is what helps me to get my point across. So hell, even if I'm talking to myself, that's what I'm doing. I'm getting my body language in there as I'm saying these things to myself. And then I'll crank up another song after that. And it just changes the physicality, right? It changes the emotion. It changes everything. It gets you into that mindset where you're ready to kill the day.
Totally. And when you do that with your neurology, you're not just saying words, you're actually engaging your whole physiology, your whole neurology, and you're embodying what you're saying. And when you embody it, that's what tells your brain it's real. And your brain's never going to make you a liar.
Yeah.
But if I can say, hey, I'm going to make $1 billion tomorrow. I wouldn't recommend anyone use that kind of affirmation. I think those are shit affirmations. But you want something that you're actually going to be able to buy into, right?
Attainables, yeah.
But when you say something, and you really speak it and embody it, you literally take it on as a new belief in your physiology. And it comes across when you're talking to people. Like, sales is a skill, but one thing that you can't teach is conviction. Well, maybe you could teach it, but it's as important, I would say, as the skill of sales, because anybody can learn the skill of sales, but to have that conviction behind what you're saying as well, like, your customers will not buy from you until you're convicted about your product.
Absolutely.
Because they're already uncertain, especially if it's about Medicare. They don't know what the hell is going on most of the time. I've met like 3 people out of however many I've met with that actually have like a lot of information and education on Medicare. I'm like, holy crap! Like, you know what you're talking about, man. You should sell Medicare.
It's a new world.
So you have to transfer that certainty and that conviction to them. Otherwise, they're not going to buy from you.
Absolutely. You know, in the call center space, a lot of times, a lot of young people are going to be the ones who are coming into those types of positions. And a lot of times what I noticed is they don't really know what it sounds like to sound convicted because they're young. They really haven't had that many opportunities to be convicted about certain things. They've had a good life, or maybe they've had a rough life, whatever the case may be. They really haven't had too many opportunities to be able to teach people and express these things. So when we teach them about Medicare and we teach them about why it's a necessity and why, you know, we want to point them in different directions and we want to teach it a certain way, they're just like, okay, well, we can follow your script and we can do this or that. But I'm like, you're missing the conviction. Like, I can't hear it. Like, to me, you sound robotic. So one of the tips that I would always tell them, I would say, well, let's reverse real quick and just think about, tell me something you are very passionate about in your life. It doesn't have to be work related at all. One of the guys said, well, I'm super passionate about playing guitar. I love playing guitar. I love guitars in general. Like, guitars, that sounded funny. I love guitars in general, right? So he's like, I could stay in the guitar shop all day long and look at all these different ones and play them, hear the different sounds and strings. I was like, okay, perfect. I said, that's a great example, because we're going to break down something as technical as a guitar and all the different strings, the different wood, the different necks, all that stuff, right? Break it down for me. Like, tell me about 2 of the best guitars that you love playing, and then tell me why. And then what I did is I pulled out my phone and I recorded it. And so
he probably lit up.
Yeah, he totally lit up. And so as he explained it, I had it recording so that I could play it back. And I'm like, listen how you sound. Listen how excited you were when you were explaining how these guitars made you passionate, like what you were so excited about, the different necks and the woods and the strings and the sounds it makes and this and that. And, you know, I was learning stuff, right? So I'm just like, but listen, this is exactly the type of conviction. This is the passion that we need to portray when we're talking about something as important as Medicare for people, because you don't understand how important this decision for them is. Like, this is why when we're talking to them, if we want to be their agent, we need to show them that we believe in this product as much as they should. That's how we win them. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up because
dude, why are you trying to drop bombs right now, man? Come on, Eric.
but I think ultimately, right?
You need to interview yourself on your own podcast. Just freaking drop them, man. Just drop them down.
Oh my God, maybe one day I'll try that.
That'll be funny.
I'll interview myself. But what I like about this, though, is, again, you can systemize. Essentially, you can systemize the process of changing the belief structure you currently have. You've done it. It sounds like you've done it. You've been from a place of, feeling more depressed about your situation to becoming a beast, and you're only getting started. You've only been in here a year. You keep this kind of consistency up for the next 5 years, like, you're going to be a beast, and so, I mean, you already are, but you're going to be incredibly happy with your results.
One thing I could say about that, do you know who John Assaraf is?
No.
A lot of people in the insurance industry don't. He was on like the movie The Secret, if you've ever seen that. He built Remax of Indiana years ago into a $4 billion company in sales every year. He took a bunch of companies, I think 2 of them public, and sold them for millions and millions of dollars. A very successful guy. If you look up John Assaraf, he has a NeuroGym. It's a company for the brain reprogramming. He's a big brain guy, loves the mindset, talks about the law of attraction, more importantly, the law of Goya. Get off your ass.
I like that.
That's a good role to go along with it. But I met with him. I paid him a good amount of money. I'm not on the Josh Lustig level. I paid him 13 grand to spend 4 hours at his house in San Diego. And I actually was texting him this morning. But one of the things he told me, because we recorded the whole thing and I'll listen to it from time to time, is we wrote down a script of my life, because he told me a story. He said, if someone tapped you on the shoulder, you're walking down the street, said, Eric, or, nice to meet you, sir. Your name's Eric. Okay, great. I want to give you a script because I think you're going to be perfect for this role in this movie I want you to play. I'm going to pay you. If you learn the script, you become the actor for it, you take on the role, you really learn the script, you really learn that role, I'm going to pay you $10 million. What would you do with that script?
I would be the best.
The hell out of it. Yeah,
I would be the best.
Right? How often would you rehearse it?
Every freaking moment I could, until it was time to execute. Every freaking moment I could.
So he had me write out a script for my life, because this man has taken multiple scripts in his whole life and written out what it looks like word for word, and it's become a reality.
Your entire life. He made you write a script for your entire life, from now until the day you die.
Well, that's not correct. Let me correct that. In every area for the next 5-10 years.
Okay.
Not my whole life.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still every area of your life for the next 5 to 10 years. Okay.
And one of the things he told me is we wrote down all the beliefs I needed to have. Like, hey, if in order for you to achieve that, what would you have to believe about yourself in order to get that, to make $1 million or 10 million or whatever it is? Oh, I'd have to believe I was good enough, smart enough, that I could do it, and all these things, I deserve it. And he goes, now, if you were to take a robot and plug the software, all of these beliefs into the robot, what do you think the robot would do in the world? I was like, holy shit, that robot would freaking crush it. He's like, get the beliefs and the programs into the robot, and pointed at me. And I was like, dude, huge.
I love that.
So programming is such a big thing. Yeah. And a belief is like a chair. You have the chair, and then you have the leg to support it. So your brain's never going to make you a liar. You're always looking for things to reinforce your beliefs. So you need to constantly reinforce them consciously if you want them to be there. And a lot of people I notice that are really high performers, a lot of them are very unconscious about the beliefs they have. And I'm more of a kind of a conscious person. I'm always looking at, okay, what do these people have in common? And one of the biggest things is, how Grant Cardone talks about commit now and figure the rest out later. Any of the top high achievers that I'm sure you've interviewed, or anybody in the insurance industry, they have this belief that they say, I'm going to commit first. I'm going to figure out the answers later. And that's one of the biggest beliefs that I've noticed in the top people.
Yeah, that's it. You got to just take action. Yeah, that's why you hear certain famous sayings like fail forward, right? That's something you hear a lot in the sales industry or in business industries, is fail forward, so that even if you fail, you're still moving forward. So I love that. I love the programming aspect. It was something that Josh first actually started talking to me about, was the programming, because I never thought of my thought processes in form of a program. But I mean, they're like supercomputers, right?
Yeah,
organic,
he's an expert on that, man. He
so
crushes it.
I love all of that stuff, man. I think this is something where when people listen to our conversation, there's a lot to take away from it. There's a lot that they're going to be able to implement. It's not just about, I tell people all the time, it's not just about saying, hey, this is what I do. I spend $4,000 a month on leads. I make X amount of calls, get X amount of sits, end up making X amount of sales, cross sellers. Like, that's great. But the problem, as you mentioned at the very beginning, is the execution. People get these programs all the time. They get these, these templates of what exactly they need to do, but the execution isn't there because the mindset isn't there. And I think that's why more of these conversations, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, but this is kind of what I'm pushing forward, is I'm trying to interview more people who are willing to have these conversations about how they change their mindset so that they can achieve success. So I appreciate you being on the show today and talking about this, Julian.
Absolutely. Last thing I'll say is, I'm not perfect. I don't execute on everything. I don't always do what I say I'm going to do. I work on it every day. I try to get better every day as much as I can. One thing I'll say, though, is I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard a lot of the things that we've talked about. But if you've already heard them, are you actually doing them? I would challenge you on that. And start doing what you already knew and know what to do. One of the biggest ways to do that for me, and what's helped for me, is do something like a 30-day, 60 or 90-day blitz. Whatever habits that you know you need to be doing that are going to move the needle forward, whether if it's meditating, cold shower, whatever you think it is. I love cold showers personally. I don't think that's necessarily going to grow your business. Maybe I don't know.
Crazy. I'm not
totally
down for
could.
that.
You know, I don't think you need a complex morning routine where people are like, oh, I spend 3 hours reading, 2 hours meditating, I take a cold shower. Like, I think that's productive procrastination a lot of times with a lot of people.
Ooh,
people like Cody Askins, though, they crush it. You know, they have their morning routine, then they get to work. But my point is, start doing it. And one of the best ways to do it is go on a 30-day blitz where you do it every single day, make it a habit. And I bet you, I'll put money on it, $5.
$5.
Someone's going to say way more than that. For 30 days, I bet you after 30 days, if that habit really moves the needle forward, your life will be different. And you'll be different.
100%. And you know, one of the biggest things that I'll end with here is that a lot of people complain about, they feel overwhelmed sometimes, that there's so many pieces to the puzzle. And in order for them to get moving, they feel they have to execute on 1,000 different things at once. I always tell people, listen, the feeling of overwhelm is never going to go away. In fact, as you get bigger, that's going to get bigger as well. At the end of the day, though, you're only able to do so much. So the best thing that you can do is just finish the next task. Finish one at a time. And then when you're done, move on to the next and move on to the next and move on to the next. And you'll realize that if you just focus on what's in front of you, you end up becoming a lot more productive, because when you're done at the end of the day, you'll be like, oh, I got through a lot of stuff. Whereas a lot of times people just focus on the overwhelm so long. They'll spend hours just feeling overwhelmed and then just go watch TV or go smoke a cigarette and smoke another one and find ways to procrastinate. And at the end of the day, they haven't done much. That's why it's just important to focus on what's in front of you. Take one task at a time, take one step forward at a time, and you'll see that you'll end up walking a mile.
Can I say one last thing on that?
Absolutely. You finish. Go ahead.
You're making me think. I'm sorry. No, I want you to finish. I keep thinking of things every time we talk. I learned this from one of Grant Cardone's top salespeople, Steve Spray. He talks about finish out the cycle that you're in. If you just got a phone call from a client and they have a question, call them. Finish the cycle. If you're working on something right now and someone asks you a question and pulls you away, say, hold on 1 second, let me finish this cycle. Get in the habit of finishing your cycles. If you opened half of your mail and didn't open it and read the rest of it because someone else called you or something and you got distracted, finish the cycle, open the rest of the mail. As small as you think that would be, you getting in the habit of finishing out each cycle while you're there will translate to the execution piece, and that will build momentum, and the momentum will carry out and make it, make your business explode.
There's things that I love about talking to other successful agents, and that's that I can pick up the names of things that I already execute, right? So I love that. Finish the cycle. I love what that's called, because I love doing that myself, where if I have messages that I still got to attend to, I want to finish that out. If there's small issues that I got to go and fix, I want to finish it out. I don't want my day to end with a bunch of things looming for the next day, because then it's only going to pile on to what tomorrow is. So I like that. Finish the cycle. That's solid.
It takes space in your brain too. Sorry,
it does. No, it does. It does. Well, and I'm sure we could stay on here for another hour and a half, 2 hours, because there's so much to unpack here, right? But unfortunately, I know that time is of the essence. So I do appreciate you being on today, man. It's been a blessing to have you on here talking about your strengths and your weaknesses, and really talking about how you have gotten into that position that you're in now, where you're shining, man. You're shining. And I can't wait to see 5 years from now where you're at, because you have the right mentality and you have the discipline, and that's going to get you so far. So thanks again for being on.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Everybody else, you always know I'll be back. So until next video, thanks for watching. See you soon.
Hey, thanks for watching the podcast. If you like the content, please hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That way you can get notified when more new content comes out. We'll see you on the next one.